This is Calgary 911.
Hi, someone just got shot at outside of Broncos on 11th Southwest
Avenue. Gunshots, many, 15, 20. I'm not sure. I'm a block over. I just heard it. And there's people running.
Okay, can you see who's been shot?
It looks like a young lady.
A young lady. Is she awake?
I'm not sure. It looks like they're performing CPR to her.
Safe? Are you okay? I'm okay, but the girl on the floor is not. Do you guys see blood?
Where is the bad guy or the bad girl?
I have no idea. I don't even know.
Are the cops there?
Yeah.
The police is there?
It would have been about 4 o'clock in the morning that I got my call to come into the office, and it's on the way into the office that I'm assigned as the lead investigator for what's going to become my life for the next 2 or 3 days.
A Toronto woman working in Calgary was out enjoying a night on the town with her friends when her life was cut violently short.
Police say Natasha Mohammed Farah from Toronto was just hanging out with her friends outside a bar in downtown Calgary early Saturday morning when she was hit by a stray bullet.
Natasha Farah was a beautiful young woman who'd moved to the city from Toronto, vibrant, friendly by all accounts, and she had spent the night out with her friends. They were just finished at the bar, and they were standing outside sort of collected as a group, just enjoying those last-minute conversations that I guess you have. And a group of callous individuals around the corner pulled out a gun and began shooting the gun into the air. And eventually one of the suspects leveled the gun towards the crowd of people, and she was shot once in the chest and was killed instantly. Typically, when an incident like Natasha's occurs, once those first responders get to the scene and make the scene safe, there'll be an assessment. What happened? Based on information that they collect from witnesses. And from that information, we start to piece together sort of a story that will be corroborated based on what crime scenes is finding at the scene.
It's something that we're probably going to take over just to make sure that we make sure everything gets to the lab that needs to. Investigators simply aren't aware that that's part of their...
My name's Steve Dewick, and I'm one of the crime scenes supervisors within crime scenes. I supervise a team that would collect and document and analyze evidence, and then we assist units like the homicide unit and prepare evidence for court. When we go to a scene, we look for anything that might be there. In this case, we are aware that there may have been a firearm used and numerous shots fired. So we're looking for any firearms-related evidence, and we're also looking for any biological type evidence that might help us identify who actually committed the murder.
In Natasha's case, there was a triage of witnesses. There was many people that saw different things at different points in time. So if you just heard gunfire, you may not be as important as the person that saw the actual person shooting the gun.
Okay, so you hear people screaming and people running all over the place?
People running, and there's a load of people in the Max parking lot.
Have you heard or seen any vehicles tear out of there?
I have not.
Right. And there were 2 cars that did a circle and bolted very suspiciously. White cars, sedan style, one maybe an older type Cavalier.
The video canvassing was completed that day. Within a very short period of time, we had a suspect vehicle.
So in this case, we brought the vehicle back to our building to examine. We're looking for biological material such as blood or even contact DNA. And we're also looking for fingerprints, anything that can help us identify who might have been in the vehicle.
Everyone leaves something behind. When you touch a vehicle, you're always leaving something, a fingerprint, sometimes DNA behind you. This can help us greatly in trying to piece together what they did in relation to this vehicle alone and where they were. Our bays are usually full with vehicles, and with the current economy, jobs going down and the drugs that are in the city right now, a lot of break-and enters come from people just wanting to buy drugs, and just stolen vehicles are a part of that. We try to figure out where we're going to dust based on how we would touch the vehicle ourselves. When someone is gassing up, they might be leaning against the vehicle or resting or anything like that, and hopefully that's where the offender is touched as well. Whenever I find a fingerprint, I'm always excited about it. It helps us know we're in the right space and we're going down the right path of what we're finding. But it can take a long time, depending on how much detail is in the fingerprint. It can sometimes take a while for the expert to go through the fingerprint and call it or not.
We're looking at specific uniqueness within the friction ridges. It's a loop type pattern right here. There's a good bifurcation here. It exits out on this side. That immediately tells me that it's a right-hand digit. A lot of people believe that these crimes can be solved overnight. That's the CSI effect. They think, oh, we've got those fancy machines that we can put our fingerprint that we found at scene into this machine and it'll give us a printout of the immediate offender. That's not the case whatsoever. It can never be rushed because that's where mistakes are made. It lends itself to being sloppy, and the work that's conducted here within forensics, it can't go in that direction. I went to a file yesterday where I found some prints on the outside of a vehicle. I just did them in chemist grade, but I've submitted both the white ridge detail and the black, whatever works best for you guys. AFIS is the automated fingerprint identification system that we use regularly. It's the national fingerprint database. If it does come back positive, there's the next step, a two-person blind verification process. Two persons within the unit are then required to do a comparison between the known and the unknowns.
And then fingerprint file from Sean's, if you can do the secondary on that, that'd be great.
That process could take a few days to possibly even a couple of months. There's a great deal of pressure on the individual forensic member. You're always going to be held accountable as a credible witness for knowledge over a variety of areas, not just fingerprints. We're expected to do footwear and tire track impressions, collecting DNA exhibits, particularly if there's a death involved.
There was a fingerprint that was found, and we were able to identify a person of interest in relation to this offense. There was also what appeared to be blood on one of the rear doors.
Our offender, the person that was shooting the gun, actually had cut his hand at some point and that had left behind blood on the vehicle. In Canada, we have a DNA data bank. What that does is it compares DNA samples that are collected, say at my scene, to other crime scenes across the country.
The DNA related exhibits are submitted to the RCMP lab. Turnaround time for that is typically around 40 days. Once someone is convicted of a designated offense, a blood sample is taken from them and submitted to the National DNA Data Bank, and it's then stored on the DNA Data Bank.
In this particular case, the offender had had their DNA taken before, and so their DNA was in the data bank. Some of those witnesses couldn't actually identify him as the person that also pointed the gun into the crowd. So the issue is can we prove that the person shooting the gun into the air is the same person that actually shot Natasha?
We treat all shootings with urgency, whether it's a homicide or not, whether it's intentional or not, only because our goal is the same. If we can help them investigate all of the shootings, that plays a big role in the overall approach to tackling gun crime as a whole, and maybe even preventing shootings. But this particular scene, it was a little challenging because there was bullet damage identified quite high up on some buildings. A bit of a challenge getting up to those elevations to work at determining the trajectories of those gunshots. Because it's safety glass, the window just crumbles. So the gunshots go through these two windows, end up in the front passenger side dashboard. So working from the bullet holes in the dash backwards, we can determine that the shooter was kind of to the driver's side. We're using trajectory rods, we call them, and supplementals with lasers and sometimes fog to visualize the lasers. So it's not all done at the scene, like many people think it is. So when you see it, they'll see us doing trajectories and they'll think, that's it, the shooter was there. Not necessarily, not when we get back and we consider possible ricochets and other influences. What we're doing there is we're gathering data. We're gathering all the information we can, which includes trajectories, angle measurements, and that sort of thing. But we're not finished there. We have what's called a Firearms Standards Reference Collection, so over 4,000 guns, and they are primarily illegal or illicit firearms that have gone through the court system or have been seized for other legal reasons. It is basically a library of firearms that we can use when we need either gun parts to make a firearm operable or do research on a serial number that's been obliterated.
Guns in Canada have very tight regulations and restrictions for importing and selling. So a gun with a serial number removed can go for more money than a legal gun. Every gun's unique, and we have a firearms reference table that was created by the RCMP, so I can research the format of the serial number, you know, how many letters, how many numbers. The serial number is stamped at a certain depth. There's still a few gouges in it, but I'm going to try using the acid etching method. This Fry's reagent is actually a really strong acid that we'll use on steel. It'll actually eat away at the deformed particles from the stamping. So I'm seeing what I think is FYV 42 something and then a 3. And the research that I did tells me that this should be 3 letters and 4 numbers. All gun manufacturers will make their characters a little bit different. I could potentially mistake the 3 for a B, but because I know that there's 4 numeric characters, I can for sure say that it's a 3. So we got the whole serial number now. The actual physical restoration of the serial number can take anywhere from 5 minutes to an hour, but the prep work before that, the researching the actual format of the serial number can take a few hours. And then once I'm finished with the gun, I write the report. That can take half a day to a day, and that's just one small part in a file.
It's a very tedious procedure. It can be very time-consuming depending on the quality of the evidence we're giving. We have instruments that can compare evidence to databases, for example, and provide likely matches. But in the end, it takes a scientist, a human, if you will, that has to get a hold of that physical evidence and verify that match on a microscope comparing bullets and cartridge cases.
I don't want to put an innocent person in jail, so I want to make sure that when the jurors are making their decisions, they know enough about the case to be able to make that decision. Right in this area, and I could magnify it a little bit more, and that you can see similarities that are crossing over. Here's the dividing line, so you see the 2 different objects. This is a comparison microscope. It actually has an optical bridge that allows you to see 2 stages side by side when I look through the binocular eyepiece. On a cartridge case, you not only have the areas of the firing pin that you can look at, you can find it in areas of the extractor, the ejector, the chamber marks. And I'm not just looking for that one magic line, but several different of these markings. In the past, we've had disagreeing expert witnesses testifying on conclusions they wanted based on who was paying them more money or which side that they were working for. So we don't want to have that opinion be just rendered by the willy-nilly of an examiner, but more so based on actual evidence that you see by the visual aspects of your examinations. To give unbiased information that's helpful for the jurors to understand, say, the function of a gun. Not every juror has fired a gun, so it's for me to be able to explain how it works, what happens, how it can happen, and what I found of whether that bullet came from this gun, and be able to give that juror that much more information to make a better decision.
The round extracted from Natasha's body matched rounds that were extracted from the building that was being shot into by the offender. And that was the link that we needed to say that the person that was shooting into the air that was witnessed by many people was the same person that shot and killed Natasha Farah.
26-year-old Farah was an innocent bystander, just hanging out with friends outside of a downtown Calgary bar when she was shot and killed in August of 2014. The man responsible, Hussein Ibrahim, was originally charged with second-degree murder and has now pleaded guilty to the lesser charge of manslaughter. Court heard Ibrahim was out celebrating his birthday and was extremely drunk when he fired into a crowd, hitting Farah.
That night she died, she even called me and I talked to her. And today, I'm really happy. I talked to her. I didn't know that was the last. Me and her, we're going to have a conversation.
She had a family that loved her, and she came to Calgary, so she was already distanced from them a little bit, so I'm sure they were missing her, and then she came to harm here, so that's just heartbreaking for her family. I think most people can relate to that.
For somebody who has a child themselves of that age, facing a death situation, it's never easy for anybody, because we all have our limitations.
It's not external pressures from our organization that cause us to want to solve these cases. It's internal pressures. We all want to bring resolution to victim families.
Forensically, we're trying to give them closure, hopefully by finding a suspect. If we can give them an offender to go with the crime, then we hope that we can give them a bit of closure.
Science is always evolving, there's always new methods. It's all completely unbiased. We do the same procedure and the same practice, no matter what the case type or the occurrence or the offender.
We're working on being more proactive and helping fight the crimes a little faster, getting the information to the detectives so that they can get those individuals off the streets so that they're not committing more crimes.
But at the same time, the demands are steadily increasing. The shootings aren't slowing down or anything. If anything, there's more, and we're seizing more crime guns, I think, every year. So we're going to investigate every shooting. We're going to analyze every crime gun, every bullet, and every fired cartridge case, and turn it right back around and help fight the gun crime in the city.